listener production.
Hello, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Jayson Gillham is an internationally renowned pianist that made headlines across the world after dedicating a performance with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra to journalists who have been killed in Gaza.
I've played lots of pieces that have had a political beginning. There's lots of classical music that comes in a sort of fraught political context, but it's all in the historical, so people sort of think, oh yes, that's in the past, that's fine.
Now, a legal battle is underway with Jayson claiming unfair dismissal on the basis of his political opinion. Antoinette Lattouf's chat with Jayson is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Bension Siebert. It is Tuesday, the 10th of September.
Good morning, Sasha. Australian children will be banned from accessing social media under a new plan by the federal government. Anthony Albanese is expected to announce the move today, with the legislation to be introduced to Parliament before the next election. The bill would introduce a minimum age requirement for social media platforms and other relevant websites, like the ones for gaming. This comes after both South Australia and Victoria announced they'd be implementing an age limit of 14. We don't yet know what age the federal government will choose, but it could be as high as 16. The laws are set to draw on a recent report prepared for the South Australian Premier, which laid out the framework for establishing a minimum age.
Yeah, this is really interesting, Bension. They're saying they want to introduce this legislation before the next federal election. Doesn't leave them a lot of time. They've got the rest of this year and a few months into 2025. Look, social media's impacts on kids is fairly well documented. It's been likened to having negative effects like alcohol or vaping or smoking might. So how they're going to do this, though, whether it's going to be enforced is another question. There is the third stage of an age verification trial, which is getting underway today. Now, that trial is looking at preventing children from accessing porn and limiting social media access for teens between age 13 and 16. So what this trial is going to involve is live testing different technologies that could possibly be used to determine a user's age. So whether that is what is rolled out, if this legislation gets through, we don't know. The police don't know how they're going to enforce this either. It's all yet to be seen. A lot of the onus is expected to be put, though, on the social media companies themselves, which, my question then is, well, why would they choose to play ball? What incentive do they have to work with the Australian government? We've seen Elon Musk's response to being asked to take down a video of a Sydney bishop being stabbed and him fighting that in court. So how willing X or Facebook or Snapchat will be willing to play with the government on this is yet to be seen. So it is worth noting as well that Peter Dutton has indicated support for a minimum age of 16. So this could get through based on, both sides working together and agreeing on implementing this minimum age.
Over to the UK now, where Princess Kate has announced she has completed her chemotherapy and is trying to stay cancer-free.
The last 9 months have been incredibly tough for us as a family. Life as you know it can change in an instant, and we've had to find a way to navigate the stormy waters and road unknown.
In what can only be described as a cinematic masterpiece, the Prince and Princess of Wales have released a 3-minute video in which Kate can be seen driving through woods before being joined by her family on a walk through open fields and forests and the beach and playing cards. It was filmed last month in Norfolk and features plenty of displays of family unity.
Yeah, and in the voiceover, as we heard, Kate describes her cancer journey as complex, scary and unpredictable. She says it has afforded her and William time to reflect and be grateful for the simple yet important things in life. The princess, of course, first revealed back in March that she was undergoing treatment for an undisclosed type of cancer, and she wasn't expected to return to her public roles until later this year. Palace sources say there is still a long way to go, with her health being the primary focus. Now, I watched this 3-minute video that felt like an ad for a perfume. It was very cinematic, very beautifully shot, very warm. There was clearly lots of lovely warm filters going over the top. It was very different to any royal kind of video or image release that I have ever seen. Kate and Wills have done a video like this before where they were kind of on the beach, but it was all very, it looked very polished still. And I felt like while this was obviously a polished piece of work, it felt very, very emotional for the royals, which I think it left me feeling a bit like on the back foot with them because I was like, oh, you're telling me how you feel. This is amazing. So yeah, like it's lovely and it's, being written up all over the place and everyone's very excited. So it's wonderful to hear that she's finished her chemotherapy. Now, in it, she talked about how her main focus now is to remain cancer-free. So I think we can take from that, doctors have kind of given her the all clear for now that she, for the moment, isn't having to have any further treatment, which is great. But of course, there's a long way to go for Kate. So she says she's going to return to some duties soon. She says she's looking forward to getting back to work. So there you go. Lovely positive story for Kate after what I'm sure has been a pretty tough year for her. I mean, never forget, we were speculating about whether she was even alive at the start of this year when she disappeared for months at a time. So good to see that she's up and well.
Yeah, good to see that she's up and well. I will say that this video was quite cringe. I mean, like it's supposed to be this heartfelt, emotional thing, and you've got like Kate and Wills walking in slow motion, and you've got like the scripting is so sickly sweet. I'm glad. I'm really, really happy for her that she's cancer free. But God, that video, I just can't deal with that.
The coalition is at odds over whether Qantas and Jetstar should be forced to break up. In an article yesterday, Shadow Transport Minister Bridget McKenzie floated the idea of making the Flying Kangaroo sell its budget carrier under divestiture laws in order to bring down airfares for us. Within hours, though, Nationals leader David Littleproud had come out in a very public rebuke of the senator, saying that was not the position of the party or the coalition. McKenzie was then forced into a press conference, during which she said that her piece in the Australian Financial Review did not express a need for Qantas to sell Jetstar.
I explicitly rule out needing to break up Jetstar and Qantas.
Labor then seized on it at question time. Here's what Transport Minister Catherine King had to say.
Another evidence-free and damaging thought bubble from people who've proved once again why they can't be trusted with managing Australia's economy.
So, yeah, Bensi, on this idea that Qantas should be forced to sell Jetstar. Obviously, there's lots of conversations going on about the fairness of our airlines and whether they're anti-competitive. And so, yeah, this was just kind of this weird flash in a pan thing that happened yesterday and sent both sides of politics into a bit of a meltdown.
Yeah, it's a real mess for the coalition. And I just have to say that Bridget McKenzie saying, quote, in my opinion piece in the AFR that I hope you've all read, I explicitly rule out needing to break up Jetstar and Qantas. Now, I have read this opinion piece and that's just not true. And here's my evidence for that. The article is entitled, Is It Time to Force Qantas to Break Up with Jetstar? That's Exhibit A. It ends with, the government's competition review should, quote, be a failure if it doesn't address the role of divestiture in the Australian aviation industry. This is what she was calling for, and she is now stepping that back.
And it isn't September without a big song and dance from Apple about its latest products. In an event at Silicon Valley this morning, our time, the new iPhone 16 was unveiled. The big point of difference with this new model is its use of artificial intelligence, Bension.
Yeah, it'll be called Apple Intelligence and will include writing tools that use AI to help draft emails and texts and also enable more natural conversations with Siri. There's no doubt Siri can be very awkward, so Apple is really talking this new feature up.
Yeah, just quickly, one of the interesting things that it said it could do would be that you could say to Siri, hey, I want to send Jennifer all the photos from Friday afternoon's barbecue, and the Apple Intelligence will go through, pick out the photos you took at this barbecue and then send it to Jennifer, your mate, which I thought was pretty interesting. Do you know what my concern would be with that though? You know how like sometimes, say I'd taken a photo in my own backyard right before that barbecue. Maybe I was posing in a way that I wouldn't want other people to see. And then the intelligence goes, that's an outdoor photo of Sasha on the grass. She's probably at that barbecue. I'm going to send that too. Do you know what I mean? Like that's iffy for me. I don't know if I would trust my phone. I don't know if I'd trust Siri to be able to pick out which photos were from the barbecue and which photos were from me enjoying the sunshine. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool little nifty feature. Just be careful of what photos on either side of that little trench.
Always
barbecue
be
photos.
careful of what photos are on your phone is my advice.
Private albums with Face ID locks on them is my advice. Bension, thanks so much for being here for the headlines. Next up, it's Antoinette's deep dive with a man called Jayson Gillham and his position on supporting journalists in Gaza.
War and artistic expression has collided in the controversy surrounding Melbourne Symphony Orchestra's treatment of British Australian pianist Jayson Gillham. So you may recall 4 weeks ago, Jayson's performance was cancelled by MSO after he performed a song called Witness, which he dedicated to the more than 110 Palestinian journalists killed by the IDF in Gaza. There was swift public outcry over this cancellation, and then soon after a vote of no confidence in MSO in solidarity with Jayson, and then MSO management admitted it had made an error in pulling Gillham's performance. The managing director resigned effective immediately, and the art institution said it was working with the musician to reschedule the concert. So that rescheduling never happened. So not only have talks broken down, but they've escalated. Jayson is pursuing legal options, claiming unfair dismissal on the basis of his political opinion. And in a public letter, the MSO returned serve via its lawyers who say the demands are outrageous and will never be met. So how has it felt to be at the middle of all of this? Jayson Gillham, welcome to the briefing. First off, tell me about that song Witness that you performed and the preamble, or I guess the spiel you gave the audience just before you performed it.
Okay, so this was on the 11th of August. I was playing a recital under the auspices of the MSO. They were presenting me in this recital in advance of another concert with the orchestra at the town hall about 5 days later. And the piece Witness was written by my friend Antoinette Lattouf, who's another Queenslander. And we had been chatting just as friends and just saying, how awful it is to see so many distressing, images of beheaded babies and all that kind of stuff coming out of Gaza. And it's like, how can we as artists respond to the genocide, basically, and try to bring awareness to it, but also bring an artistic sort of flavour to it. So the first concert was in Melbourne. And I wrote to my manager and said, do you think all the solo recitals on my tour, do you think they would agree to the addition of this piece? She said she would ask them, and they all said yes. But I think maybe the orchestra didn't really do their homework because they didn't know that the piece was dedicated to the journalists of Gaza.
And so you introduced that before playing the piece?
So I introduced the piece, and I introduced all the pieces in the program. And so I did, and I said, this is the world premiere. It's written by Antoinette Lattouf, and it's called Witness, and it's dedicated to the journalists of Gaza. And so then I read something that I had prepared before I went on, because I wanted to make sure I got my words exactly right. And I said that over the last 10 months, Israel has killed over 100 Palestinian journalists in Gaza, and that the killing of journalists is a war crime in international law, and it's done in order to prevent the documenting and broadcasting of war crimes to the world. And then I sat down and played the piece.
And what was the sense in the room? What was the reception?
Nobody reacted while I was speaking. And then as I turned to sit down and I sorted out my iPad that I'd been reading from, which also had the score on it, I heard a few little titters, like people just, they're chatting a little bit. And then I played, and then at the end there was, a decent applause, because it's not as if it was a happy piece. So you got a kind of, I suppose, what I expected as a decent amount of applause. And there was a man in the front row who raised his arms above his head, and I thought, it's nice to see that someone really appreciated what I did.
Why did you use your time on the stage to talk about Palestinian journalists in Gaza?
Well, I feel actually since the genocide started, I kind of felt like I didn't want to play music anymore. I was like, what am I doing as a classical musician when we're all just going through the motions and playing what, we said we're going to play, and then we just go home and we're not really having any impact in the world. And in fact, I didn't really enjoy practicing anymore because I was just spending all my day looking at terrible things. So I wanted to maybe use my platform in a way that brought some more attention to what was going on in Gaza, particularly because, living in a Western country, our governments are sort of funding and they're complicit in the genocide, So I want to bring awareness to that fact.
And have you previously used your platform to dedicate songs to other groups or people or raise awareness of other current issues during a performance?
I haven't done it quite so pointedly before, but I've played lots of pieces that have had a political beginning. There's lots of classical music that comes in a sort of fraught political context, but it's all in the historical, so people sort of think, oh yes, that's in the past, that's fine.
Well, some may ask, well, why now? Why choose a current conflict and why this one?
Well, how could I not? That's just how I feel. Like, how could any person, it's not just an artist, but how could any person not be shouting about this? That's just how I feel. Like, we have to stop the genocide or try to bring awareness to it, even if we can't. We don't know what our individual action might be able to achieve. Maybe it's just a ripple effect and other people start to feel more able to speak themselves.
And what do you say to those who argue that the stage is not a place for political statements, that people were there just to listen to some lovely music and have a good time?
Well, I think art's also there to disturb, so it's finding a balance between, yes, it's not just entertainment, it is entertainment. People come, they think, oh yes, I just want a nice Sunday recital. But also, when you go to an art gallery or go to the theatre, you want to be challenged as well. And I think that in classical music, some people have forgotten that is the case with classical music as well. Historically, even, Beethoven's music, Shostakovich, that kind of thing. And even like The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, that was a piece that shocked and people booed and they walked out and all this, this kind of... I never expected anything to happen at my concert, Antoinette. I didn't expect
that was
anything.
Actually, you've preempted my next question because I was like, did you anticipate that this might happen?
Not at all.
At all?
No. I mean, I thought that there might be some individual people who were a bit disgruntled or they didn't want to hear this, what I consider an inconvenient truth. But I think, it just reflects on the orchestra, really, the way that they overreacted. I mean, it wasn't what I said that caused a problem. It was the fact that they overreacted and then wrote to every ticket holder from that day and said, we will have nothing political on our stage, and Jayson went beyond the remit of his contract and all these kinds of things.
So it appears that the MSO then changed their mind. They realised that they'd made a mistake. They said as much. One of their executive leaders resigned as a result of the mishandling of your case, and then it seemed as though the concert was going to be put back on. And then it didn't happen.
Yes. So what happened in the end was we had been trying to agree on a joint statement where the MSO apologised, and I accept the apology. But the MSO on the day of the concert instead ran with safety concerns, and they said they were cancelling the entire concert because of safety concerns, which I believe is a cop-out. I don't think there were safety concerns. I think it's anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Arab racism. I think they're trying to say that there's going to be an angry mob of Arabs descending on the town hall or something like that, in not so many words. But we tried to find a way forward, but I felt that there wasn't enough time to rehearse anymore. But really what happened was the orchestra took adverse action against me by cancelling me the first time, and that's not resolved.
And so that brings us up to where we are now, because that is now what you're exploring legally via the Fair Work Commission and unfair dismissal. Via its lawyers, in an open letter, the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra says Gillham abused his position by using MSO Concert to air his political opinions. He did so improperly. As was inevitable, it caused distress to many members of the audience. As you mentioned earlier, there was also a safety concern. So there's safety, distress. What do you think about this language being used to describe your actions?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is isolate me from other artists, and they're saying that I'm an activist, I'm a protester, and that what I did was something very specific that is different from other political things that happened in the classical music world or on a concert stage. I don't buy that at all. That's not what I did. I only said, less than 100 words, and it was relevant to the piece that I was playing. And, people like Daniel Barenboim have stood up on Sydney Symphony Orchestra stage and talked about, Australia's treatment of First Nations people, and he's spoken very critically of Israel. From the Sydney Opera House stage, we've had Russian musicians who've denounced Putin at their concerts. And so I think it's a cop-out. This kind of silencing only happens when you criticise Israel, let's be honest.
When you received MSO's letter from the lawyers, did anything about the tone jump out at you, or even perhaps the legal firm they selected to represent them?
Well, the first thing I noticed was ABL, which is Arnold Bloch Leibler, and I thought, well, that's the sort of Zionist firm of choice. They're the same lawyers that are taking Mary Kostakidis to court with the Zionist Federation of Australia. So I was actually initially very surprised that the MSO had gone down this track, considering that they'd sort of said they want to learn from what had happened. But it was very dismissive, the letter, and the tone was, Mr. Gillham was wrong. Everything he said was wrong. He knows he's wrong. Go away. We'll never give an inch, basically.
And what message do you think that sends to other artists when they do engage a law firm where its co-founder is the former president of the Zionist Federation of Australia? It's one of its other partners is the current president of the Zionist Federation of Australia. There's no secret about its links to the Zionist movement and to lobby groups in Australia and in Israel.
Yes. Well, it basically says you can talk about anything except Israel.
The things you're asking for is a public apology, an affirmation of artists' right to speak freely, compensation for reputational damage, future performance opportunities to repair professional standing. You want also to commission a piano concerto by a Palestinian composer and a donation to the Edward Said National Conservatory of Music in Palestine. The letter from MSO's lawyers say, no way, you're not going to get that.
Yeah, they said, we're not giving in an inch. Gillham was wrong. He knows he's wrong. Go away, basically. It was 1 page. My lawyer's letters was 12 pages, which went into great detail about the law and talked about Victorian law and also federal law, things like that. So I feel that the tone of the letter is very dismissive. They're just hoping that I will go away or that I'll be scared.
Are you scared?
No, not really. No.
It's overwhelming, I'd imagine.
It can be, yeah.
I could only empathise.
There are all sorts of things that go through your mind, Antoinette. Yesterday I had a concert in Goulburn where I played Witness for the second time in public, and I had to think about how I would introduce the piece, and I thought, well, I'm not going to go back on what I said. So I went into greater detail, and I talked about the Committee to Protect Journalists and that they report that there's at least 111 Palestinian journalists, and I went into very great detail, and that they know that there are at least 4 who were directly targeted, and mentioned the names of those 4 people, and then talked a bit more personally about the piece. And, I got applause before I even sat down to play the piece. So a different audience on a different day gives a different result. And I had so many positive responses from the original time I played it as well.
Are you worried more broadly that this case may stifle the role of cultural institutions in public discourse or dampen it?
Yes. Well, Australia, I think, is in a pretty precarious position with that already, with your case and with the Sydney Theatre Company, with the State Library of Victoria, all of these examples of, any time somebody expresses even the mildest sympathy for the Palestinians or their cause, wearing a keffiyeh is seen to be, a traumatizing event for certain people who then, withdraw their funding from, cultural institutions. And it's a big problem.
So the MSO is currently undertaking an independent review, as you mentioned, led by Peter Garrett and KPMG on what has happened. Do you have faith that that review will be handled fairly, or that review can work concurrently with any legal action?
It could. I don't know at this stage because I haven't seen any of the terms of reference or anything like that. So that's something that I would want to see before agreeing to participate in the review, although I feel very strongly that I should be allowed to participate in the review and have some input into the terms of reference, because I think, I don't really know what they're going to do, or it could be really good. So I don't know.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see. In the interim, in the meantime, as this all plays out, you're still touring, you're still performing.
Yes. I have concerts with the Canberra Symphony next week. With a good friend of mine, Jessica Qantas, conducting. She wrote to me and said, I'm so looking forward to our week together, so I'm really excited about that. And then I've got another regional concert in Shepparton, and I'm adjudicating, it's called the Australian National Piano Award, which takes place in Shepparton.
Wonderful. Pianist Jayson Gillham. We contacted MSO for comment and asked a range of questions, including whether MSO believes artists have a right to political opinions. We asked how it exactly quantified and qualified distress amongst its audience when Gillham dedicated a song to slain journalists, and also inquired about the selection of legal representation, given Arnold Bloch-Leibler has very open and very numerous ties to Zionist lobby groups. The MSO told us at this stage they won't be commenting beyond the following statement. We've established an independent review led by Peter Garrett and KPMG to explore issues relating to the operations of Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. It's crucial that the review be allowed to get on with its important work and encourage the MSO community to support the review process. It would not be appropriate to comment on matters pertaining to the review at this time. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. Antoinette Lattouf signing off for now. But before you go, we'd love for you to share this episode with someone you think might be eager to hear it. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. And we're also on TikTok and YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed with another episode this afternoon from 3.
Listener.